a little tersely, I thought, and with an edge of irritation which suggested that he did not quite appreciate the fact that I knew perfectly well the projectionist was not literally in screen 7. He was up in the projection booth. "He's in the projection booth," explained Roger. I pursed my lips a little and tried to gauge the tone of this comment. Was he having me on, or did he actually think that I needed to be told that the projectionist was in the projection booth rather than in screen 7? I decided to give him the benefit of the doubt. "I know he's in the projection booth," I replied, taking care to keep my tone measured and encouragingly interactive with no trace of hostility. "He's in the projection booth for screen 7, and—" "No," Roger cut in assertively, "he's in the projection booth. There's only one. It's very modern. All the screens are controlled from there." This was undoubtedly true. As we noted earlier, it has long been common practice for a single overworked projectionist to operate any number of screens in a modern multiplex, leaving them unable to attend to the deficiencies of an individual performance. The solution to this problem, according to those who run such establishments, is not to employ more projectionists, but rather to install equipment that has no need of the projectionist's art. Equipment like those aforementioned digital projectors, which need only to be switched on, allowing the whole movie to be perfectly projected from beginning to end without clunky reel changes or old-fashioned analog snarl-ups, just like it does when you put a DVD on at home and simply sit back and enjoy the picture. Have you ever done that? Slapped a DVD on and then just sat back and enjoyed the picture? I haven't. Why not? Because the opportunity for error with digital information is just too great. First up, you have to make sure that the picture is playing in the right screen ratio. Oh, I know this infuriates people, and I'm constantly being told just how annoying it is that I cannot be in the same room as anyone watching TV in the wrong ratio without reaching for the remote and correcting the grievous error forthwith. But why the hell shouldn't I, when those errors are so easy to fix? It's not like the picture doesn't look wrong, for crying out loud, and every modern television handset has a ratio adjustment button that will happily snap between screen sizes until you arrive at the right one, which you will know you have reached because it's the one that looks right. It really doesn't matter what you're watching, whether it's a handsomely remastered copy of John Ford's The Searchers or the early evening broadcast of Look Northwest. It makes no difference. If the people on the screen look dumpy and squat or squished and thin, then change the flipping ratio until they look right. Unless you're watching Sex and the City, in which case that's how they're meant to look. And it's not over once you've got the ratio sorted. As anyone who's ever watched a DVD will know, getting the disc to start playing is just the beginning of the fun. Since digital technology is a binary yes-no or on-off affair, it is entirely possible for a machine attempting to convert a string of noughts and ones into moving pictures to give up the ghost unannounced at any time, causing the picture to freeze and the player to helpfully inform you that it has encountered a disk error, or, less helpfully, to attempt to assure you that there is simply no disk on which errors might occur. So you trudge over to the machine, take out the allegedly non-existent disk, wipe it on your t-shirt, having perhaps breathed on it first, and then put it back into the player to see if it likes it any better this time. Sometimes it does, and it will start playing from where you left off. Hooray! Other times it will insist on going back to the start menu and make you endure those infuriatingly patronising anti-piracy messages through which it's impossible to fast forward. More often, it will simply repeat its evidence-defying claim that there is no disk, leaving you to A. start the whole process all over again, or B. shout, swear, kick the DVD player, try again, fail again, and finally end up watching Look Northwest instead, in the wrong ratio. Do you have a picture of this home is where the hate is horror in your mind? Okay, now transfer that to a cinema auditorium where the problem is magnified by the fact that everyone there has just paid 10 quid for the thrill of being there, and now the bloody film's either in the wrong ratio due to being projected through the wrong lens, or misaligned or stuck or whatever, and you can't get anywhere near the projector to kick it. I once interviewed a projectionist from a major West End cinema who told me that he refused to run a digital print of a movie unless he had a secondary 35mm backup projector running simultaneously but 30 seconds behind. That way, if the digital brick blipped, which they are wont to do, he could simply open up the second projector and show the rest of the film from reliable old celluloid. The great advantage of film is that it is splendidly mechanical, and if anything goes wrong it can usually be fixed with razor blades and sticking plaster in a matter of moments. The same is true of gramophone records. If the record gets stuck, you can always just move the needle onto the next groove and away you go. Not so with CDs, which, when they fail, run the risk of simply not playing at all. I know this to be true, having worked at Radio 1 during the great advent of CDs and D-carts, digital cartridges, and experiencing firsthand the horror of TDF, total digital failure, which you simply never had to face with old-fashioned analogue. Hell, if the worst came to the worst, you could actually haul a segment of tape through a reel-to-reel machine manually and it would continue to play. Okay, so the sound would wobble and warp all over the place, but at least it didn't just stop and leave you with nothing but silence. Or darkness. Or a frozen picture, which is what you get when a digitally projected film fails. And when that happens, not only is there nothing the projectionist can do about it, unless they've got a 35mm print laced and ready to go, but most of the time, there's no projectionist there not to be able to do anything about it in the first place. They're too busy being unable to do anything about a whole bunch of other screens. Which brings us back to Screen 7 and Zac Efron's hair, or, as I mentioned earlier, the lack of it. Having ascertained from Roger that the picture was, as I suspected, not being closely monitored by a keen-eyed projectionist after all, the next step seemed simple enough. Get Roger to get the projectionist to move their arse up the projection corridor and correctly adjust the image in Screen 7 forthwith, a process which would take approximately 30 seconds tops. How hard could it be? Very hard, apparently. Firstly, Roger refused to believe that there was anything wrong with the image in Screen 7. No one's complained, he stated firmly. I'm complaining, I replied, still unsure whether he was taking the piss. Well, no one else is complaining, clarified Roger, theatrically casting his eye around the lobby as if searching for an angry mob with flaming torches demanding to see more of the top of Zac Efron's head. There were indeed none. I was alone in my complaint. But I failed to see how the fact that everyone else was prepared to put up with shoddy projection meant that I had to do the same myself. I was beginning to feel worryingly militant about this issue. Look, I said, still struggling to maintain a veneer of politeness, the image is spilling over the top of the screen. It's as clear as day. Come and see for yourself. Roger thought about this for a moment, and then looked intently at his watch, clearly attempting to give the impression of a man who was far too busy doing his job to worry about keeping the customers happy. Then he apparently remembered that keeping the customers happy was his job, slapped on a plastic smile, looked me in the eye and said, "Okay, I'll check it out." "Great, thanks for that, thanks very much." I was pathetically relieved to have achieved such an assurance of cooperation, particularly since things had looked like they were about to turn uncomfortable. With a spring in my stride, I almost skipped my way back to Screen 7, happy despite having now missed nearly 15 minutes of the movie. No matter, I'd seen it before and I knew what happened. It was a shame I'd missed the car crash because that sequence was actually done really well. But it was worth it to know that Roger was going to come and take a look at the picture, notice the fact that the top of the frame was doing battle distractingly with the top of the screen, realise I had been right all along, and then go get the projectionist to fix the problem with the merest tweak of a knob or changing of a lens. Okay, so right now the image was all wrong and kept messing with the top of Zac's hair, but any moment now it would all be sorted out. Any moment now. Any moment. Really soon. Just another few moments to give Roger the time to get up to the projection booth, track down the projectionist, drag them away from whichever other screen was currently occupying them, point out the problem, and get them to fix it. Any moment now. Coming soon. To this theatre. A correctly projected image. Any moment now. Any moment. Oh, for fuck's sake! I sprang out of my chair, down the aisle and out into the corridor, almost breaking into a run as I headed toward the lobby. As I rounded the corridor, I saw Roger idly chatting away with a gaggle of his similarly underemployed cohorts, none of whom seemed particularly interested in cinema in general and the running of this cinema in particular. As I thundered toward him, Roger turned with the merest hint of a smirk on his face, apparently unflustered by my evident sense of outrage. "What the hell's going on?" I demanded. "I thought you were going to come and check the picture in Screen 7. "Yeah," replied Roger, unfazed and more than a little uninterested. "I did. It's fine." He smiled at me, as if to suggest that I should stop worrying my silly little head about such things and get back to my seat. I was doing no such thing. "It's not fine," I said firmly. "It's cutting off the top of Zac Efron's hair. He's missing a whole foot from his head." "He's what?" "The top foot of the picture is missing." "The top few inches of the picture is missing," Roger corrected, patronisingly. "It's fine." This statement floored me. Roger was conceding that a part of the picture, the exact amount of which was admittedly a matter for debate, was indeed missing, as I had been saying for the past 20 minutes. But apparently in his mind this was fine. Never mind that I had paid to see the whole picture rather than some diminished proportion of the same. I wondered whether Roger would have found it equally fine if an equivalent proportion of the cost of my ticket was similarly missing. If, for example, I had handed over £13 rather than £14.60 for 1.5 seats on the grounds that all but the top few inches of the purchase price were present and correct, and so that was fine. "But you can't see all of the picture," I protested. "How can that be fine?" "I've checked," said Roger, as if this somehow explained his position. Which it didn't. "What do you mean you've checked? You've just agreed with me that the top of the picture is missing. I think it's a foot, you think it's a few inches. What the heck, let's split the difference and call it a nudge. Whatever. The point is, we both agree that some part of the picture is notable by its absence. So just tell the projectionist to rack it down a bit and—" "He can't rack it down a bit while the film is playing," declared Roger with an air of dismissive superiority. This sounded like utter bollocks. I decided it was time to move things up a gear and do something I have honestly never done before. Pull D-list celebrity rank. "Listen," I said quietly enough to make Roger have to lean forward in order to hear what I was saying. "I am a film critic. I have been a film critic for 25 years. I know the film playing in Screen 7 isn't meant to look like that, because I saw it properly projected at a press screening in London 4 days ago, where I particularly enjoyed seeing all of Zac Efron's head, including his hair. I don't know whether you're projecting from celluloid or digital, but I do know that his hair should feature prominently in either format, which it isn't doing in Screen 7. I know that it's possible to correct an image on screen while the film is playing because highly qualified projectionists have been doing just that for over 100 years. I also know that I have paid a huge amount of money to watch this film, and having done so, I expect you to have the courtesy to take my complaints about the quality of the picture seriously enough to actually go and do something about it." Roger looked at me. I looked at Roger. Everyone else looked at Roger and me. We stood there, deadlocked. Finally, Roger went for his gun. "The picture's fine," he said, and with that he turned on his heel and strode off into the foyer. On the journey home, I asked my daughter if she'd enjoyed the film. "Oh yes," she said, "it was great. I really like Zac Efron." "Did you like his hair?" I asked, in a leading kind of way. Sure, but I meant more that I really like him as an actor. He's got a really good dramatic range. You know, he can do happy and sad, romantic and tough, grown up but childlike. He's really good." "But what about his hair?" I insisted. "Could you see it all right?" "What do you mean? His hair was fine. Why? Didn't you like it?" "Yes, I liked it a lot, but I just couldn't see it because the picture was racked too high." "What?" "The picture was misaligned. It kept cutting off the top of his head. And his hair. Didn't you notice?" "Oh yeah, but so what? You could see his face okay." "Yes, but you couldn't see his hair." My daughter looked at me as if I was mad. "But Dad, he wasn't acting with his hair, he was acting with his face." She thought for a moment and then frowned. "Is that where you went in the middle of the film? Were you having another argument with the cinema manager?" "What? No." "Well,